My name is Johnny. I'm SOUTHWORKS CTO. So, and this is kind of the conclusion of everything that we are seeing, that it's the rise of these cloud-agnostic platforms will integrate services across providers, offering this interop, right? Like this interop is something that we need to stop looking at the world of black and white, or like Azure or AWS, and those sort of like battles. It's like, hey, you might have, and going back to the question of like getting really into the core of the platform, is like, we understand that at this point in time, there might be a better offering on Azure. And if that's the case, let's build the bridges, let's build the network, let's build the blueprint for that to happen, rather than, just picking sides. And I think that one of the most interesting things about this workload balancing, it's answering to a market that comes with these weird, like, non-technical reasons for you to change clouds. Like, hey, we assume that since Amazon is going into pharmacy, it will be a threat for all the healthcare customers. And it has nothing to do on how good or how bad AWS is. And you need to be ready for it. So that's one. And the other thing is resiliency. Like, hey, if you need to move, or you need to be ready to move if something bad happens, then I think that the world is getting closer to that agility and thinking in terms of that in the sense of technology.
But taking that from a real world perspective, so many cloud partners, right, are encouraged. AWS is platinum partners, and Google has their partners, and of course Microsoft has their partners, and these cloud providers are kind of feeding them, right? From a business perspective, how do they view SOUTHWORKS?
Let me jump in time, and it's like I just work with them all, and my take. And it's like, if you're bringing me an Azure deal, I will work on it. If you bring me an AWS deal, I will work on it. But if you come from the outside, know that I know them all, that I work with them all, that I'm like advanced, platinum, whatever, because it's good for our business. Set aside the pipeline that we can build as a business and the intake of leads and those sort of things. It's like when you talk migrations, and if I need to advise people, I need to know them all. We try to, leave the fanatism of like, hey, I like Azure, or I'm a Google guy, or I'm an AWS person. That's great. I think that, and we have people like that, which it's not that everybody will love working on every cloud, but they know, the strongest selling point for each one of these clouds. So whenever we are facing one of these, like, hey, do you move everything? You leave just that behind because that's better. It's an opportunity, and also for customers, because one of the things that we see from the market when it comes to an introduction, let's say from Microsoft to migrate an AWS customer, it's like, awesome, Azure, and that's great because we don't. But I don't have the bandwidth to teach you AWS because my team talks on EKS, EC2, Lambda, and Aurora, and those sorts. That's the lingo that you will hear. And if you're not familiar with that, then we need to spend a lot of time like teaching you so you can make the synapses in your brain and figure out what's the equivalent. So we appreciate and we work with them all in terms of partnerships, but we do it for sake of our own internal knowledge. So if an agnostic customer saying that it's not sponsored by any of these clouds comes to us, we will show the options. And it's like we work with the three of them, and we hold a strong level of partnership with the three of them. So it's not like, hey, we just tick the boxes and you feel comfortable. We go take the trainings, we go share the leads, we do everything. We are transparent, and they know this because every Microsoft customer that I pitch, I go with like, hey, we also know Google and we also know AWS, because it's part of our value. We talk about being cloud agnostic, we talk about being agile, we talk about moving clouds. So you need to know them all from the inside out. And that's our play. We rather not be cornered as like the Microsoft shop or the AWS shop or the Google shop when it comes to cloud.
Yeah, so that's interesting in that, at least in our market, in Asia Pac, the clouds are pretty pointy, some more than others, about making people not play with the other clouds, with their partnerships and the way that they structure their partnerships. So I've heard some feedback from some friends who work with them. But you mentioned standardization as a thing to be able to do this cross cloud, to be agnostic. Do you see Kubernetes as providing that level of standardization, or is there something still needed to provide that common baseline for customers to be able to do this well?
I think that Kubernetes is a great starting point, but it's not all of it, right? Like it's not, I will just containerize my workload and be done with it. I think that there is a lot happening that has to do with, taking advantage of the cloud services that you could do through operators or services or sidecar containers and stuff like that. That from an industry standpoint, we see a lot of people devoting their time to make it play nice with Kubernetes or using Kubernetes as the foundation for it. Take NVIDIA and the GPUs with their operator and exposing their APIs so you can tap into the GPUs from containers and those sort of things. We need more of that. I think that the standardization level in terms of like you can put things on containers and move it cross cloud, it's great, but you don't want to miss out and host your own database and host your own like directory service. So I think that through operators and those sort of things, we are seeing Kubernetes more as a platform or as an extensibility layer in which you can plug these things and allow that level of freedom, because if not, we will all be writing our own services for the things that the cloud will provide natively. So those levels of abstraction and coming up with a streamline, and this is interesting because every time I talk with a customer and they are like, hey, we are thinking of moving from AWS to Azure. And I was like, you know what? I know your question. What about S3 and Azure Blobs? I cannot believe that 15 years down the line, we have no streamlined API for dealing with blobs. And it sounds like it's just putting freaking files under a URL, and we have no API for that. And I think it's intentional, but through these, we are looking for mechanisms so you can use the features from each one of these clouds, but have a layer of abstraction that will allow you to play nice with it. And Kubernetes is a good foundation, but it's not enough. It's not like when people come to me and say like, hey, we are cloud agnostic because we are running containers. It's like, sure, right? Like that's like 50% of the battle. Just to wrap it up, these are some of the projects that we love and use and would love to, engage in the next couple of days as we're here on the KubeCon. These are some of our contributions because we are not only part of the CNCF, we just take an active role on trying to, when we are doing these migrations, if and when we find gaps, we try to go back to the open source project and say like, hey, here is how you manage the Azure API for Terraform and those sort of things, or contributing to projects like Carpenter and those sort of things. As I said, we speak multi-cloud. That's our goal, but it's also our day-to-day. And just to wrap it up, we believe there is a better way to do software development. It's blended into our value prop we call development on demand, thinking in short-term contracts and these hands-on keyboard support to help them go faster, to help them achieve their goals, and hopefully we will move on and they will continue with their lives feeling that we just were the boost that they needed when they needed.